This is the Unlock Your Inner Creator series, and I'm your host, Noilyn Mendoza. My intention with this series is to spark conversations with passionate changemakers and creatives that bravely dared to dream of new ways and took massive action. Despite the chaos that's happening around us, a radical and liberated future, a new earth can be realized and is possible if we choose to take brave steps. So I invite you to explore with me what that could look like. Welcome, everybody. This is the third installment of the Unlock Your Inner Creator series. I am super excited for today's guest, Leah Angela Sahagun, or as many people affectionately know her as Leah. So for today, we are on the eve of Earth Day. So I am calling in the energy of Mother Earth, of Mama Earth, the energy of the feminine, infinite creativity, abundance, interconnectedness, life-giving, and longevity. She is the bringer, the nurturer, protector, the womb, and the home. So my intention with this conversation series is to spark conversations with passionate change makers and creatives that bravely dare to dream of new ways and took action. So I like to think of Maxine Hong Kingston's quote a lot in the last year. And this quote goes, "In a time of destruction, create something." We are in the midst of a long stretch of the unknown. And that unknown and this uncertainty is what we have been taught and oftentimes programmed to fear. I would like to offer something different, that instead of fear, that we come from a place of possibility. It's because we don't know what's next, that we can be in a space of creation to think about what it is that we want to build moving forward. And so we have this opportunity to birth different ways that honor the dignity and wholeness of each person, living thing, in our planet. That despite the chaos that is happening around us, a radical and liberated future, a new earth can be realized and is possible. We can and we have done these things, and we can create better if we choose to take brave steps. So I invite you to explore through the series what that can look like. So I am super excited to have my sister on so many levels here today, Leah, or as some people know her, Leah Angela. She is an energy bending alchemist, consultant, educator, facilitator, organizer. I love all of these identities, but in general terms, a 21st century economic accounting professional. Her current projects are worker cooperative movement, camper conversions, decolonization in the workplace, mini books and bookkeeping story tales, unpacking and repacking ego, international sister looming, celebrating 17 years of marriage, solution pending projects. Leah also gave me another bio, which I will read you because I love all of it. And it goes, reassemble in ways of education, empowerment, and balancing, restoring is Leah's later relationship in life, with life, and death's process of forgiveness and purification. Leah is a multi-spectrum ecoMedia creative, currently nomadic, originally sprouted in occupied Tongva territory. We're both based in the same area, and living with zany amounts of gratitude. Leah, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Salamat, Noilyn. Thank you so much for having me here today. Such an honor to be part of this series, this conversation series about unlocking the inner creator within each and every single one of us. There's power and potency in just that title alone. I think we're meant to be creators, and when we're not creating, some terrible things can happen
Yeah,
to us creators.
yeah, absolutely.
And definitely in this time, right? Like the time of possibility.
Yes.
So thank you for that warm introduction.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for receiving the transmission of the intent of this conversation series. And I wanted to start off with this question because, if someone was like looking at your bio and looking at like all of these diverse experiences that you have, for some people, it's like, oh, this is very different. You're an accountant, you're a healer, you're an organizer, it's all of these different things, right? So it's such a varied, diverse, um, multiple passions. So I'm really curious. I want to get to know you a little bit more. Tell me about where a lot of these passions started. How do you see them? Are they apart from each other? Is there convergence in some of them? So let's start with that. Go ahead, Lay. Tell me a little
Mm.
bit more.
Okay, so the question is, where did it begin? And I think it begins with service,
Mm,
being available and to be of service. And there was a time in my life where I had no idea what I was doing, how I was getting there, and all that. And I wanted to understand my purpose.
mm,
When I find myself on the floor or the ground,
mm.
and I mean that child's pose where you're very low and you're like bowing
Like fetal
into your,
position.
yeah, fetal
Mhm.
position. I do that often,
Mm,
especially being nomadic. I travel very often and I do not have a steady roof over my head. I have not in many years, and that's a chosen path. I can't say for everyone, not everyone has that luxury, and I name that here. Um, when I was asking my ancestors, God, universe, however we want to call it, outside of me, huh? That like I think that's the intention here, is what's my purpose?
mm,
Always came back to be of service. If you have a full cup, you are available to be of service. And so there's this process of liberating oneself. in, I'm speaking for myself.
mhm,
I have, once I've concluded that my purpose in life is to be of service, and that comes in all sorts of different ways which we can dive into. um, it's like, how do I show up for myself so that I'm operating always from a full abundant cup, and being very clear of when I am available, when I'm not available, who I'm available to. Um, and then also, just keeping the light. One of my nicknames is Love Light, Lay Love Light. Lay is my nickname, but Love Light. And I really operate from that place. So if many of people have heard of the different chakras, um, going back to that place when I was trying to figure out my purpose, at that point, my chakras were corroded, corrosive,
mm. That's such a
not
juicy word.
healthy.
It was corroded. It's like you don't even have to explain more. You just
Mm-mm.
visualize like how that could look like.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was unblocking not just the physical chakras, but also the spiritual and then the blood history. That's one of my teachers have called it, an Indigenous teacher, is blood history. And so I think over the past 10 years, I have been intently with full commitment and discipline to continue to clear,
Mm,
purify. So that's where that purification comes from. All of the things that I was holding on to, and then also kind of making peace and making way with the residual things, so that
mm,
day by day I don't accumulate anymore. I
mm,
can continue to operate from that purified, clear space. And what prompted that? Let's be honest. I am human in this human lifetime. I carry the stories and the responsibility of my family, which is
mm,
from the Philippines. Both my parents are from the Philippines, and I am the firstborn here in the States. Um, I think there was a lot of responsibility that I felt like was placed in my direction, and I didn't know quite what to do with it. And it wasn't until I went very far away from my family to kind of identify what is mine and what is my family's, and
mm,
then do the healing work from my place where I was coming from. It
mm,
became more clear. I became more grounded. And that's what invigorated me to be nomadic. Was I don't have to do the regular 9 to 5 job. I can really make ends meet and thrive. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, there's so many, there's so much wisdom in what you said. It's so layered. So I'm gonna try to, I have a lot of thoughts in my mind of the next question that I want to ask next, but what really struck me was around this idea of purification. And when I think of purification, and you talk about it in the energetic sense, but also in the bodily sense, right? Like we are many bodies. This isn't, we're not just a physical body. Um, this idea of clearing away is so necessary to get to this next step, this next evolution of what can be, both from an individual and collective level. Um, Talk to me a little bit about how purification looked like for you.
I think I was a very scared individual many years ago.
Mm.
And so I'm calling that version of myself into this space.
Mhm.
And so there's this present here and now individual that's calling them in. Um, I see that version a lot today.
Mm.
And that version carries a lot of fear, sometimes paranoia,
Mhm.
sometimes just scared to take that leap of faith and to surrender to trusting. And I've called in tiwala. Tiwala in Tagalog means trust. And so I've made tiwala into a goddess. And I know we'll talk a little bit about, divine feminine. And so tiwala. Um, Gosh, I think let's circle back into um was it why? Is that the question? Okay. I
Also,
can you
another way to look at this, how,
how?
you know, I mean, if we could also
Ah.
put it like, we're calling it purification, but a lot of it is like, you can use other words that might resonate with other people, right? So like decluttering is another way of
Mm, mm, mm,
purification, right?
mm.
Going minimal is another way, right?
Okay. Okay, I see where we're going here.
Removing, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
words are intentional, like
Yeah.
they're just not said there. I think I used the word purification from my teacher. His
Yeah.
name is S.N. Goenka. Many called him Goenka G. He's passed away many years ago. And the version of him that I learned from is audio and video recordings. And this was a silent meditation retreat that I attend annually. And because of the pandemic, I do it on my own, at my own place. So in this particular technique, we take a vow of silence
Mm.
and we ask for um, support from our loved ones so that we can let go of the responsibilities for the, 10 to 11, 12 days of being away from family and the day-to-day responsibilities. It's really practicing impermanence and letting go
Mm.
of things that we're attached to on a regular basis. So I think in taking those precepts or an oath, so to speak, it's coming back to self and there is a level of commitment in why am I doing this? Yes, I want to be purified. I want purification to happen within me, throughout me, around me. And it's not just within my mind, but it's also everything that I am touching, I'm interacting with.
Mm.
So if I'm operating, calling back to that older version of me, if I'm operating from that place of fear, from scarce mentality, from holding on to conditioning that was taught to me, not to say that it's bad, I'm not defining it as bad at all. It's just, is that really mine, or is that someone else's
Mm.
framing? And I want to take honor of me. I am a sovereign, empowered being, and such that if I'm operating from this place and I am sharing, being of service, I want to come from that place that is feeling pure. Hence, me being committed to practicing purification within myself. And also, you could do that easily with water. Like every time you are about to drink water, you can bless your water. And then at least that way, you bless the water and then you bless yourself. And then when you excrete it, you also bless wherever that travels to, so wherever it goes.
Mm, that is so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for a very practical strategy to drink water and to think of it that way. Um, and then you also talked about like, it's interesting because the last person that we interviewed, Kevin, also talked about the way that he found himself was also through stillness when he was in nature. And you were talking about this idea of like silence, right? So that you can really get to the core. And that really struck me because that's how you found purpose, right? And so when we were thinking about all of these different identities that you hold, regardless, you were saying like the thing that weaves them together was this idea of really getting clear about what it is your life's purpose is. And I do think that that's important as a creator, that purpose is something that drives you to get up in the morning when things are hard. It's what's they remind you what your why is. Why is it that I do this? My purpose at the end of the day is to serve, and it can look like many things in the many hats that I wear. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so going back to purpose, right? And I mentioned being of service. Um, I say this in front of my closest friends, and I'll say it here now. I have rewritten my contract, my life contract,
Mm,
that wherever it ends, I know that I can come right back. And it kind of reminds me of the movie Inception when they're going through like layers of reality, of
yeah.
dream state reality. But
Oh.
how do you find that? You're connected back into your physical body, that physical self. And in that movie they call it a totem. You need to have a totem, so that's
Mm,
how you know. So in my case, I know my totem is my breathing. If I know that I can come back to my breath,
mm,
that's access. And it's transcendent. It's not linear. There is no time and space within my breath, and so hence one of my longtime projects and businesses called One Mindful Breath. Sometimes all it takes is that one mindful breath to come back into the present moment, and that's power right there. No one else can teach you. No one else can access that for you. It has to be within each person to choose to find it.
mm,
So I think this is part of like, we're in this day and age where people are like, oh, I need to find my guru, I need to find my teacher, or whatnot. Sorry, honey, your teacher's right in front of the mirror. Just look straight at them.
mm,
I sometimes I go straight into the mirror and I look straight into my eyes. And when
mm.
I'm feeling lost, I look into my eyes and I say, hey, you, I see you. You know, I trust exactly what you're doing, and this is where you're meant to be right now. You're right on time. You don't need to be anywhere else but right now. And sometimes we need those little pep talks. And
Yeah.
so this kind of goes into one of my other projects, one of my other businesses, which is called Emerald Matriarch Agency, EMA. And speaking about the word agency, I had said the words empowered and
Mhm,
sovereign. Um, I think that's the reason why I've chosen that word, or in fact, that name chose my project. These names come from my prayers and my meditations.
mhm,
Um, so agency, I think there's power in standing in your truth,
mhm.
in speaking, and not really I mean, people can speak for you if you allow them to, but really the challenge here is speaking for yourself. And when I say speak, it doesn't need to be like an audio speak. It could be speaking by writing or moving,
Mhm.
or there's so many variations of expressing yourself.
Yeah, I love it. Like, I didn't even think about that until you said it. I was like, it's so intentional in the way that you name things, agency. Another word for it is like, yeah, standing in your power, being in control, having that choice of your free will, right? Um, you also talk about like the importance of breathing. And you just reminded me, the conversation we had before was around purification. Breathing is also a form of purification as well. And so if you're okay with it, what folks also may not know is that one of your healing modalities is you're a breathwork practitioner. So if you're okay with it, Lay, maybe let's breathe together. Let's
All right.
set the tone.
All right.
So what
I
do we
mean, there is no right or wrong to breathing, right? So I guess this is an invitation, and you could say yes, or you could say no. And if you are saying yes in this present time, I invite you to place your feet flat on the ground or the floor. If your legs are crossed, if you're wearing chinelas or chanclas or slippers, feel free to kick those off. And we're going to go ahead and place our hands flat onto our laps and go ahead and just give your body a good shake. Yeah, just remind yourself that you're in your body. And if it helps, if you're coming from somewhere or maybe you've got the phone on you, distracting you, just go ahead and mindfully just pick little energies off that's in your near vicinity. And this is showing that, like, okay, I'm taking these roles off. I'm a mom, I'm a sister, I'm a wife, let's just come back to self and then place your hands right on our chest. The only thing you have to do in this present moment is to be. So if you feel called, I invite you to gently close your eyes. Feel into your inhale and feel into your exhale. Take your time. Really narrow in and narrow down on a physical sensation. Maybe you feel your chest rising and falling, or you feel that air coming out of your nostrils. Create laser pinpoint focus on that specific sensation. Choose one. And for the next 3 breaths, just focus on that physical sensation and nothing else. One more breath if you haven't taken the 3rd one. Beautiful. Now, I invite you now to gently blink your eyes open. Go ahead and open up your eyes. And now that we've come back into our self, this vessel, which we call our body, after every meditation, I always encourage everyone to also practice metta. Metta in Sanskrit and in Pali, which is one of the ancient languages on this planet, metta means loving kindness. So when we come back into our center, ourselves, the best practice, in my opinion, and what my teachers have taught me, is to share. You must share your merits of goodwill so that they too find that same place. And in meditation, we're also healing 7 generations forward and back if we so choose. So the instructions that I will offer right now for this collective breath in metta is we're going to breathe from the soles of our feet, rising up through our body, all the way to the top of our head. We'll take a sip of air, hold it, and allow that breath to circulate. And then when we exhale, we're going to exhale out our mouth like a tire deflating. And then when we think we reach the end of the exhale, we still have a little bit more air, so we'll push that air out and then breathe normally. What we're doing here is we're cultivating one breath. So you and I breathing together is like inviting the entire planet, whether they're sleeping or they're awake, in a hospital, arguing, frantically scared. We are going to breathe one breath together for the human planet. Shall we try? Okay. So Go ahead and wiggle your toes so you know that your feet are there. If you have feet, God bless, bless up. And in 3, 2, 1, inhale. Long inhale, allow that energy to rise up your body. Bring it all the way to the top of the head. And then sip of air and another sip of air. Suspend that breath, allow it to swirl around as you suspend your breathing. And then slow exhale out the mouth. Push, push. Breathe normally. Inhale through your nose, exhale out your nose. Thank you for breathing with me that one breath to unify every being on this planet.
Thank you for that. Wow. Thank you for centering us, grounding us, and also just to remember our breath. I think especially during this time, there's so much symbolism around breath and breathing, and we hear it in so many ways. So thank you for that reminder.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you the next question because you had already alluded to it, like people who have influenced you. So who would you say, because you mentioned a few teachers already, like who would you say have been some of the most influential people to you in your own spiritual journey, your own personal journey? Who can we call into this space today?
Okay. So the first teachers I would like to call in are the matriarchs. There's a collective of ancestors that I call upon that they have guided me in my grief work. When we are grieving something, someone, that's also a very exciting time to create because we can use that energy because we feel inspired by a particular someone or something. It's not always a loss. There's so much to gain from that experience. So I will list the matriarchs. It is my mother, Letty, my grandmothers, both on my mother and father's side, Nanay Bening and Nanay Choleng, another matriarch, Mama Bello, and then also my husband's grandmother, who I also grew up with, which is Mami Chuita. So they are the 5 collective matriarchs that guide me. And then my other teachers, I'll name them, are Ron and Tony at Spirit House Healing for Attitudinal Healing, Mirla Baldonado, who is an organizer from the Philippines and also has done a lot of organizing work in Chicago and in Los Angeles. Gilda Haas, who is an incredible writer and professor and has invited me to a lot of spaces lately for cooperatives and sustainable economies. And then lastly, you know, if I'm going to call in these teachers, I think the number one teacher that I have right now, which is my family that I've chosen as an adult. So that's my husband, who I've known for many years, and my fur babies. I believe animals are masters of being in the present moment, and they teach me all the time. So thank you for giving me the space to call in my teachers. And in fact, I should probably name one more teacher, and that's Olivia Chumacero. She is an Indigenous teacher, and she has taught me a lot about, blood history in terms of my family stories and DNA. And there's a lot of things that I use in terms of my daily recalibration and my being present practices that I have you know, borrowed and use politely from all of my teachers.
I love it. What would you say has been the most profound insight? And you named a lot of people that have influenced you, and I love that because it's not just like one or two people. There's so many people that shape us. I feel like, when we think about how we grow, it's not just as a child, right? We're continuing to grow and we're continuing to evolve and learn. If you could name maybe like 1 to 3 insights that have impacted you the most deeply? What would you say that is from these people that have influenced you, from your mentors?
Mm, mm. Okay. One of them is about the pendulum swing.
Mm,
So I'll name that. Um, and the other one is about respect and making way. So I'll first speak about pendulum swing. Once upon a time, I said yes to everything. Every job opportunity, every project, every invitation for a party, I said yes, yes, and yes.
mm,
And I would burn out. I was noticing this intense burnout every single time. And every time I would burn out, I would be gone for weeks and months. And one of my teachers noted that in me, and I felt a bit like stung, like, oh, this person sees me. Thank you for saying me, but I'm not sure I like what I'm hearing about me. And over time, they'll remind me, like, watch your pendulum swing.
mm,
And so it's interesting because I just saw this teacher. I mean, this person's been my teacher for over 10 years, and I just saw this teacher and we went for a nice walk in the woods. And we ended it up on this is in a woodsy area, and we ended on a street and there was no cars there. So we were walking right in the center where the lines are, and we were just winding around and we were talking about different stories of what keeps us away from that center point. And so I think when I say, or when they say, watch your pendulum swing, it's almost like, where is your compass? What direction is it pointing to you?
mhm,
When you are veering off course, what are the signs that are telling you to come back to center?
mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really profound tool that has helped me for many, many years. The second one is about respect and making way.
Mm,
This stems from the matriarchs in my family, and these are peacemakers. These are gatherers of sorts, and there is this honor in making sure that the legacy continues in some
mm,
way, shape, or form. It's not like a legacy of, oh, I'm passing down my name. That's very, very patriarchal. When
mhm,
I say legacy, I'm talking about the stories.
mm,
There's a lot of lesson behind stories, and a lot of Native Americans use storytelling to share moral lessons. And so there are a lot of stories that were passed down to me. And coming from a culture which is um, we use oration, we use speaking as a means of transferring information, and it wasn't until we were taught to read and write that things changed. So I think there is power in story.
mm,
Now, in making way, my tita says paraan. When I feel conflict arising, or when I'm naming something where it feels like conflict, those can be seen as obstacles
mhm,
or kind of congestion. And I'm speaking of this metaphorically, even in relationships or also even in the body. What has been taught to me is to make way so that peace and flow can resume. So earlier, prior to us beginning this conversation, we had done a prayer, right, to kind of center ourselves. And we had asked ego to no longer be present so that we could be clear channels for everyone, for ourselves, and for everyone here, and people that will benefit from this. And so I think it's important to always to state, to make a way, because if not, then we're just stagnant. We're like in these muddy waters. We have to wait till things clear up before, that lotus can bloom, or, you could see what's clear and what's there, what's alive, what's thriving there. So, respect and making way. I think there's ways, especially right now, when we're learning to communicate in more clear and direct ways. there are ways where we can communicate with our elder communities and with younger generations, and even with other people that we have different frame of minds, different belief systems and ideologies. There's a way to still speak and share where you are and meet them where they are with respect. And I think that's the challenge that I'm faced with here and now. I
Mm,
mean, I'm just going to call in that there's a lot of oppression and prejudice and racism work that we're working through right now. Um, how can we have these conversations? You know, because it's been just resulting to fighting or pushing people out from a particular region as if they don't belong. How do we have that? Well, I think it's about making way and showing respect. And we can do all of those things.
mm,
So I think if we could just come back to what we have in common, we breathe, we're humans,
mm,
we eat, we drink, we have family, you
mm.
know? So it's like if we can get back to those core basics of what we have in common, we realize we're not that different after all. So I hope that answers your question in the profound ways that
Yes,
has taught me.
always. I love having conversations with Leigh. I'm just going to say it out there because every time we get together, I feel so uplifted many times, and it's always so juicy. So I'm loving all of this. You brought up a couple of points that it made me think about previous conversations that we've had with former guests. And interestingly enough, you're the first female guest because my first two were men, or male presenting. So, um, uh, and they both brought up in their own way around this new idea of what a leader can look like.
Mm,
And one in particular talked about feminine leadership. But for me, it's not just feminine leadership, right? It's this idea of divine feminine leadership.
mm,
I think you and I can both agree when we talk about feminine, you don't have to be, female presenting like the both of us to be able to encapsulate what divine feminine leadership is. And as you were, speaking about the matriarchs in your family and a lot of the different people that you were calling in, um, I wonder, how do you define feminine leadership in this particular time that we're living in? Since, we all are in this world right now, we're in this reality. How do you think it looks like, and how would you define what that is?
mm. Good question. I'd like to call on a particular group that I'm working with right now. It's called Holistic Resistance, and we're a part of a 6-month cohort talking about anti-racism and how we can facilitate conversations. And so there's a sequence of questions of positionality.
Mhm,
Where are you positioned at this time? And the question is about, um, what do you use as a tool, as a leader, and
mhm,
as a lover? So this question was asked to me yesterday, and I answered, I operate from the place of the heart.
mm,
Of all the different places of my body, that is the one that is always open. Whether if it's feeling heartbroken or aching or grieving, or, just tough, it's open, regardless of all those other adjectives. And I think that's a really challenging thing for people today in leadership, is it very much closes off and we lose an access point. Now, in terms of feminine leadership and just feminine overall, one of the reasons why the wage gap is variant from male workers is that women are, by behavior, um, a lot of us are apologetic and very accommodating. And it's very difficult to say no. I mean, just to stand in your power to say no, 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 without guilt, without anything like that. Um, I I think there is a way of being firm without losing grace.
mm,
And that is what I'm calling in as divine feminine. There's still a way of being assertive and compassionate. And
Mm,
when I say divine feminine,
yeah.
I think that each person can carry this trait. It doesn't have you don't have to be just a woman. You know, you don't have to be a young girl. You can be male, you can be non-binary, you could be all
Mhm.
spectrums and still carry divine feminine. And I think this is one of the reasons why. We are born in the womb of a mother,
Yes.
our mother. And there is a connection from her belly, her womb, to
Mm,
our belly button. So when we touch our belly button, like that place right there for me is divine feminine. If you have a belly button, you got divine feminine. You just got to tap into that. So there's a lot of connection with our body. I think that there's a disconnection that people think, oh, divine feminine is just like this theory or it's a philosophical behavior, like it's a behavior. Actually, it's just right here on your belly button. You know, other terms for that belly button is your na'au, your dantian. It's a place of centering. You know, when they say
mhm.
I'm speaking from my gut, that's the
Mm.
same place. So we have access to it. It's a matter of how are we accessing it? Do we realize that we have access to it? And there is
Mm.
power there.
It's also your navel or your sacral chakra, which is
Yes.
symbolic of creation and creativity.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thank you
Yeah.
for that. I love how you have this way of weaving all of it, right? We're talking about leadership, and then we end up talking about energy again. We're back to the chakras, right? And we were talking about also like you were mentioning something which is very real around wage gap and money. So let's talk about money because one of the things that you do is around money, right? But you're also a healer. You're a farmer, you do co-ops, you're an organizer. And so some of these identities for some folks look very contradictory. Let me go back to money though. When people think about folks who work with money, we may, because of our upbringing, our life experiences, our programming, right? Maybe something that we see in the media. We have certain conceptions of what money is. Um, and like a lot of the work that you do is around redefining prosperity and abundance, right? So, what would you say is the most common myth that you have seen or you have heard around someone who works with money? So, whether they're, a bookkeeper like you or that does accounting services like you, what would you say that is?
I can't. I think that's the common response, a general response of
Mhm.
around I can't. And so I think the question really is when I hear someone say I can't do my taxes,
Mhm.
I can't, organize my receipts, I can't get that job, I can't make a budget, I can't. The question I ask is one, are you saying you can't or you won't? You will not,
Mhm.
because there's a choice. You can choose. You will not. We will not means like, okay, I will not. Like, I'm choosing that I won't be doing this.
Yeah.
But when you're saying it's can, it's like you're closing down the possibilities of like what you can really do. Um, so that's one of them. The
Mhm.
the second thing is um going back to telling stories, right? That going back to the matriarchs and like respect and making way and telling stories. I think it's important to think about how money has come into your life. Like, how
Mhm.
did you learn about money? How did you see your parents or your loved ones growing up? Like, how did you see them relate to money? A lot of the time, it stems from there's not enough kulang, I don't have enough, or I got to save it for this rainy day and whatnot. I'm not saying those things are bad. Not trying to say that at all.
Mhm.
It works. It works for them. However, what I'm expressing is that there is this notion of limitation. There is a limit. It
Yes.
ends somewhere, and it doesn't. That's the myth that I am saying is people limit themselves. And so in me naming my name, my profession, bending alchemy,
I love it.
thank you. Thank you. Um, money is currency. And you can call in money and you can also spend money. So it's an energetic form, right? And then money also, yeah, and then abundance comes in all sorts of different ways.
Mm,
So, for example, it might not come in as a paycheck, but it might come in with an abundance of fruit from your neighbor.
yeah.
Oh, I've been needing all of these oranges. I don't have to go to the market and, have a transaction of me spending money. It appears in a different way. So I think it would be good to just observe how is abundance appearing for me in this present moment. And most people still only see it as just money. And I think that's the myth that I would love to break. Can I just add a little bit more here?
Absolutely. This is
Okay.
your floor. Go, go, girl.
So I have this like super wild dream, and I know this is odd, but my wild dream is I would love to see every single person attempt, if not do it, every single year of filing their own taxes. And
Mhm.
let me just pause here for a moment. The reason why I'm going on this route and encourage every single person to at least attempt is we have a vote. Each person has a vote, and whichever community you're in, country you're stated, find ways to vote. When you are voting for something, it would be good to be aware of how money flows in and how it flows out.
Mhm.
And if you read ballots, they will give their own interpretation. It's very skewed in my opinion. However, if people empower themselves to say, you know what, I can do this. Kaya ko to. I can do this challenge. The more we inform ourselves and educate ourselves, then that means when we are making decisions in terms of a vote, what not just affects me, it also affects our children, our future grandchildren, our aunts and uncles, and the economy and the ecology. I think the more people who are empowered with this information, I think the better off our planet will be.
Mhm.
And so I really encourage, empowering yourself, educating yourself. Education doesn't have to mean a university, you know. Education can come in so many different ways. And so don't stop learning and don't stop empowering yourself.
Yeah, there's so much in what you just said. I'm going to start with the last piece. It's around education is a way of empowering yourself, and there's so much um, power that you can have from being in that place of having this clear knowledge, right? And not seeing as like you're necessarily giving away. So like to your example of like your dream is that everybody knows and attempts to file their own taxes. And in some ways, what I heard and what I received was this had a lot to do with money, right? And instead of giving the power to somebody else, to do it, you're learning to do it for yourself. You're understanding your financial situation in a different way. And there's like, I don't know, there's tax codes, it's very confusing. Every year it changes, but you're attempting to do it. And the other thing that you said too, and I remember my when I first met you, what really struck me, because I had hired you for like a financial matter. And one of the things that you talked about, I was like, Leah is so different, and I completely feel her. And it was a learning moment for me too. When you talked about payment, I receive payment this way, and you were like, explain. I mean, obviously, like it would be like a transactional thing through money. But one of the things I don't know if you remember, to me it was profound. One of the things you're like, seeds. You can pay me through seeds, and I was like, that. I would have never even thought of, but like understanding what that can look like and also placing value. You know, you and I are gardeners, so like placing value on seeds and how that grows and how that looks like, right? For you, because it is providing you something. I can grow my food and I can have a lot of these seeds where I could use for years. I can also go to the grocery store. So I thought that was really interesting. What I love about your work, both as, you know, financial coach and a bookkeeper and an accountant, is the way that you reframe a lot of the ways that we use certain terms. So, you know, you have a course that I participated in. Another, like, it was a lot of aha moments for me too, because it really helped me to look at money in a different way. And, you know, both you and I believe that money is energy, but also the way that we define financial terms is also energy. And we were talking about what lesson was that? It was around assets and liabilities. I think it was that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, Talk to us a little bit about some of these, like, let's redefine some terms that we use around money.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for calling in that program. It's called In My Full Power, and it's a deep dive into your own money story to create your own net worth statement. And I've uh, woven a lot of generally accepted accounting principles. Um, there was this big aha moment that I had when I was writing the curriculum. And this is something one day, maybe after I'm long gone, it'll finally be put in publication towards these people who are writing about financial accounting standards. And I have a big bugaboo about employees being expendable. When you list your expenses in terms of your employee expenditures and your independent contractors that work in your business, they
Mhm,
belong on this report called a profit and loss. That's all they are. They're just generating profit or a loss for a business. I
mhm.
have a really big thing about that. Like,
Yeah,
I'm just not happy about that. So I've redefined my purpose in terms of in the accounting industry is like I really am an advocate for worker owned cooperatives.
yeah.
I think that puts the power back into the people's hands, and that people that work for the organization should also have rights to vote and steer of how it's designed and how you make, decisions together. So one of the things that I've added is we have a mind, we have a body, and we also have a soul or a
Yeah.
spirit. And in my assets, I also include my mind, my body, and my soul. Assets. So, what can that look like? Heck, I have a full on education. I
Mhm.
have lots of education. Why is that never listed on an a financial statement? And so here we are redefining our worth, but yet we don't include our life experiences, our
Mm,
education. you know a family might not have a lot in terms of monetary abundance, but I bet they probably have a lot of like curandera medicinal knowledge. They probably have a lot of, musical skills. I'm just naming like little random things that people and their families have, yet they don't see that as value and put
yeah.
that on something like a financial statement. We're changing that now, here and now. So the next moment you write a budget, make sure you include things that include you, that create your worth, because you are worth it. And the more that we notice our worth, we can actually speak more with conviction, with
Mm,
integrity. And when we negotiate, for salaries or for that job and whatnot, what we're trying to do is make sure that the person who is hiring us is not taking advantage
mm.
of who we are. And I think that's where it needs to stop. We see too much of that, and we can name endless corporations that undervalue the people that work for them, that actually end up increasing their worth. So there's a huge gap there. So we are circling back on the wage gap, that it's not just male, female, that it's like multi-layered, multi-spectrum. And one of the ways that I think is a solution is worker-owned
Perfect, because I
cooperatives.
was like, you need to go there. You have more than one worker co-op, right? So tell us about, okay, so I don't think a lot of people know what a worker co-op is. So let's start at the basics. What is a worker co-op?
Sure. Worker co-op is an organization where every member has voting power. So I'll give you a quick example. If someone has a share, owns Apple. I've got 100 shares of Apple. Oh my gosh, I wish I did, but I don't. But someone who is a millionaire might have 10,000 shares of Apple,
Mhm.
meaning that person has 10,000 votes while I might only have 100. So does that mean to say that this person is more valuable than me, even though they are just one person and I'm also just one person? So let's X that. And here comes worker-owned cooperatives. Noilyn might have one share, I might have one share, and all of everybody else has one share. One member, one vote.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter how much you've contributed into there, everyone has a vote. Now, it will vary depending on the agreements that you all make, and all of that can be done with a legal team.
Mhm.
Um, I work with an organization called LA Co-op Lab. They have a free online course. Definitely please check it out. I am part of their academy team. And then I am developing a Go cooperative campaign while I travel Turtle Island, also known as United States of America, and having more conversations with other worker-owned cooperatives. So the cooperative that I have currently is Emerald Matriarch Agency. We are a bookkeeping and business services agency. And then we have closed down two cooperatives, or they were projects that were operating as cooperatives, and we've closed them down recently. And I'll just name them here because I've learned so much and benefited so much from it. And one of them is called Channel Earth, and you can find us on YouTube. We have a lot of videos there.
Mhm.
And I go by Galactica. That was my name, and we offered like eco information. And then Kapwa Tao, we were a ancestral channeling and what is it, like cultural group, artists and a collective there. So yes, I encourage everyone to explore a little bit more about worker cooperative, and anything can become a cooperative.
Yeah. And I love it because it's part of this, I feel like, creating new structures. So we've been hearing that a lot lately from folks, right? Especially who do movement work. The systems that we have right now clearly are not working. That's why we're seeing all of the fixtures and the fractures that are happening, they're crumbling. And I think where a lot of people get stuck is because we don't know what it could look like. Um, Sometimes people don't know where to start. So I love that you offered this idea around cooperative, because it's another way to redesign and reimagine how money distribution could look like, how workers or like owners could also be, right? It could be worker owned. I feel like that's like a concept that a lot of people haven't really wrapped their heads around, but that's another possibility too. Um, what else? Is there anything else that we haven't talked about in terms of wealth and reframing and prosperity that you would like to say?
Gosh, I think I want to name just one more thing.
Mhm.
I'm part of this incredible group. It's called an International
Mhm.
Abundance Circle, or called a mandala. And we use different elements in different phases of this prosperity paradigm. And it's a supportive group of women, and we meet almost every day, and there we challenge ourselves to
Mhm.
continually say yes to our dreams. So This has been a really amazing design where a lot of other communities have done this. Like I know the African community, they call it susu, which means that the person that's in the center receives all these abundance and gifts from people on the outside, and then it circulates. Who's the next person in the center and such? And so this is something that has really redefined my relationship, not just around money, around time and
Mm,
space. And so we actually move weekly. Like we move from element to element on a weekly basis. And, just really challenging ourselves that this conditioning of, oh, I'm this age, I should be of this job position with these benefits, with this house, with this family, blah 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 blah. That's cool, all for it, supportive of you, and not hating on anybody. However, that's not everyone's story. And
mm,
so, what I'm trying to say here is find your story, write your story, dismantle the stories that you've taken on without your permission.
mm,
It guided you for so long. Give it thanks, praise it, respect it. Find your story, write it, amplify it, illuminate it, speak it, stand in your truth.
I love it. So like, what's giving you hope or inspiring you these days?
Oh, wow. This is
Or
going
what are
to
you
be.
curious about? We could also look at it that way.
I'm curious about so many things. I mean, everything, I'm constantly inspired. I don't think I'm not ever inspired. I think I'd like to just go back to children. I am not a mother for human kids. I am an auntie and I love being an auntie. It's one of my favorite things in the whole wide world. I think what inspires me or what keeps me curious is the curiosity of children. I
Mm,
think there is this playful nature that we lose over time. And so I have reignited the relationship of the inner child in me. Um, so I actually have a date with myself
I love that.
every week, and this ignites the inner child, the inner creator in me. So the more that I can, be playful, be curious, it's not all that serious. And if you can just look at a
I hear
child
that. Yeah.
being, I mean, they're teachers. So I think that is where I would like to close it.
Yeah. And I love this idea around just play and learning, right? Because like when kids are learning something new, they don't really get down on themselves, right? Like especially like babies. I have 2 kids, 5 and under. And sometimes when I look at them, it's like I have to remember that. Like when my kids were learning to walk and they couldn't do it the first time, they didn't just I just give up. That's it. I'm not going to do it
Right.
again, right? They just kept trying. And somehow we lose that along the way. So thank you so much for that reminder.
Mhm.
Where can our listeners connect with you, or how can they connect with you?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at the number one, mindful breath, or you can find me also on Instagram at Emerald Matriarch.
Yeah, so please connect with Lay. What are some of the future offerings that you have coming up?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm going to be traveling in the near future. I've been stationed in Tongva Territory, LA, our hometown, born and raised here. And in fact, I'm going to be traveling all over the country. I'm converting a trailer into a camper. That'll be my home.
Oh, I love.
And I'm looking to connect with a lot of different people. Looking to connect with my ancestral roots back in Louisiana when the first Filipinos landed there in the 1700s. I'm learning to have more conversations about justice and dismantling oppression, especially around prejudice and racism. And then also like tending to the land. I feel like there's like this 21st nomadic nature coming out of me where I feel like a bison, there's this really cool story about bison is that when a storm arrives, cows will go away from the direction of the storm. The bison will go straight into the eye of the storm. And once upon a time, before everyone was occupied, this like in terms of cities and stuff, bison were constantly migrating around the country. And so I feel like I'm calling in the energy and the medicine of bison, um, because I am allowing resources to replenish in the areas that I had just departed from. So although I am leaving from my hometown, Los Angeles, and I'm seeing it changing a lot, there's a lot happening, including a lot of homelessness, and then with the police officers and them taking advantage of people. I feel like upon me traveling, I'm going to bring information back here to Los
Mm.
Angeles, because there's got to be other models out there that are working.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, those are my exciting things that I'm working on right now.
wonderful, wonderful. The last question, back to the title of this series. What does being a creator mean to you, Lay?
Being creator to me means that I choose how I create, when I create, what I'm creating. And creating is coming from that inner source within me. Um, I choose to create every single day, and just how I can choose to be happy, to feel abundant, to feel embraced, to feel grounded. All of that is a choice. And every time I create, I feel like I am liberated. So if I continue to create, that means maybe there's someone else that feels that same sort of liberation. So let's
Mhm.
continue to liberate one another through our creations.
Choice is liberation, is creation.
Mm,
Beautiful. Let's do a card pull as our last thought. So again, I'm gonna take my hand, I'm gonna wave it, and then you just tell me when to stop.
stop.
What do we have here? Okay. I am affirmation of the day. I am focused. I am focused on achieving my goals through deliberate actions. I take time to feel how it would feel to achieve my dreams. I visualize my desires through a lens of love and happiness. I am focused.
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you for that card pull. That was a surprise. I like it so much.
Wonderful. So thank you as always, Lay, for all your wisdom. Like I said, every time I'm in your presence, my heart feels so full. To me, this is medicine. And I know that the other folks that are going to be listening to this, that are listening to this, are going to feel so full as well. So I appreciate that. Um, and also just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in. And we look forward to having these continued conversations. So be on the lookout. Thanks so much, everyone. If you enjoyed this conversation and you'd like to help support this interview series, make sure to tune in to the next episode and share it with others. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at The Radiant You, you as in the letter U, and sign up for my newsletter by visiting www.theradiantu.com. Again, that's theradiantletteru.com. Thanks, everyone, and remember, dream big, dream bold, and take brave steps. I'll see you next time.